Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Kiwis and Comic Books, our very own little celebration of comic books, the process, the art, the writing that our own creatives here in New Zealand, across the ditch over in Australia, are part of, bringing to the industry and bringing into the entertainment world of comic books. So, again, we've got as guests, we've got Justin Young. I'm just out of sync at the moment. Sorry, guys.
That's all right.
Apologies for that. My brain's just like trying to catch up with what's going on in front of me. My eyes all fuzzy. But hey, Justin, tell us about yourself quickly, and then we'll get into it. We're waiting for our guest at the moment, who is Michael BOTUR, writer of these two books and many others. And I'm just wondering, waiting for his, is that where he is at. But while we're waiting for that, we're going to also be talking about world building today. That's what we've got Justin on, and he's working on some new stuff. And I'm going to share that, and I'm also going to share what we're going to be bringing on to crowdfunding through Fund My Comics. So, Justin, take it away, bud.
So my name's Justin Young. I'm a comic creator from Dunedin, which is bottom of the South Island, just about. I've been doing it for a few years. I've created a series called Freak. I've also done a couple of issues of Homerville, which is a horror series set in Central Otago. It's in a small fictional town. I'm just knocking things around here. I'm currently working on the ongoing Freak saga, and I've also got an all-ages comic that I'm working on called Raw Steel, which I'll show you some world-building stuff later on as we chat and
Awesome.
discuss how we do that.
Excellent. Yeah. So, what's the story about? Like, from is it Raw Steel? Did you say?
What was that again? Sorry.
Is it Raw Steel?
Raw Steel. So it's pretty much humans have played with stuff they shouldn't play with,
Right.
and other interdimensional creatures have come in and wiped the humans out.
Okay.
So it's kind of like Thundercats. So animals have evolved into like humanoid sort of creatures,
Right.
and they're slaves to the creatures that have come through the reality rift.
Right.
Are you with me with me so far?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of
So
the anime Gate. Where like
yeah,
the fantasy was come into this world. But this is
yeah,
different, right? Because you're saying that like the animals is kind of like morphed into human.
yeah. So and they find these iron suits or steel suits, like big robot suits, like mechs. And this is kind of my son's idea, so he can take a bit of credit here.
Yeah.
Um, so they find these suits and they basically take the fight back to the creatures that have come through this reality rift, and that's sort of where
Nice.
the name Raw Steel. So roaring of animals with the steel of the suits.
Right.
So it's going
Yes, I
to
guess
be
it's
all ages. Yeah.
RAOR, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. It's quite that's a quite a interesting sort of crossover because you kind of it's the animals that are in the suits, not the humans that are in the suits, which is quite a
Yeah.
interesting take on that whole mech. Um, yeah, the whole mecha, anime sort of not even just not anime, but also the whole it's kind of like the Transformers, but they're not actually they're not robots. They're actually actual suits
Yeah.
that come up with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How far have you got in that, or are you just at the beginning stages?
I'm
Or
just in the. I've written. I wrote the first issue of it, but I'm not happy with it, so I'm going back and basically taking it back to formula. But
right?
I'm doing a lot of drawing, just trying to build the world, the mythology. I'm
Yeah,
probably going to start working on like the written language. That might be the next thing that I'm gonna, because I've got an idea in my head that the squid, which are the bad guys, their their writing will be very much like runes, like Viking runes.
right,
And the animals, I haven't got a name for them yet. They'll be more like Pict, which
right.
is the one of the warrior tribes of Ireland.
Yeah,
The reason why I've picked those two is the Picts were the original inhabitants of Ireland, and the Vikings came and basically wiped them out. So I'm
mm,
trying to put a bit of a historical spin that you have these other creatures that have come in and tried to take over, and I'm sort of doing that not through um, exposition, but doing it through the language or the written language, that if people look at, oh, that looks like Viking runes, and that looks like the Pict language, and they can
Yeah,
kind of go, oh, so that's kind of a parallel to what happened in our history.
it's pretty
With the
cool,
words
man.
right
Like,
here.
I mean, it's like that's the thing about world building, right? When you're taking it not to just like what the actual the physical things around the creatures look like and in that universe they're living in, but also you take into the language as well. So is there anything else
Yeah,
apart from the language that you're doing, like costume design and stuff?
yeah. I'm doing suit design. So, want me to show you some of that now?
Sure, man. Yeah.
So, this is a book I've got. It's my Bible.
Mm,
So, where are we? So, this is kind of the original suits I was going for. Um,
okay.
just a bit too Iron Man-y.
Yeah.
So what I did is I went for the PlayStation symbols as a basis.
Yeah.
So that one there, that's the circle symbol.
Nice.
That's the square symbol.
Yeah.
That is the triangle,
Okay.
and that's the X.
Right.
So I've sort of, because I couldn't really figure it out. I don't want them looking like Iron Man. Like it's sort of
Yeah.
being done to death.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, my son wants to turn it into a PlayStation game at some point, so it made sense to use the PlayStation symbols to as a basis to sort of build. And I've done a few keyframes as well.
Mm.
Um, so I've got one of the suits here fighting tentacles,
Oh, wicked.
just as a why not? Then there's like a group shot.
Yeah.
Um, and I've also designed some of the where are we? So I've done little things like that,
And this is the
just to
creatures that
try.
come through the, through the
Yeah,
rift.
yeah.
Nice.
Um, but I originally designed the animal creatures like this, but they're a bit too Ratchet and Clank looking.
Mm.
So I've gone through and I've started looking at likes of bears, like Kung Fu Panda sort of.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of going more that way.
Mm. A bit more aggressive looking rather than a bit more less cutesy looking. You're more
Yeah,
aggressive.
yeah. Going more for the Thundercats look.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's pretty cool. So, like, how many like? I mean, you're gonna read. I mean, was it the artwork? Did you come up doing that first and then do the writing, or did you come up with the writing and then do the artwork? How did
Uh,
you kind of work it out?
I've come up with the writing first
Mm.
because I had it originally that humans hadn't been wiped out, that it was all
Right,
going to be humans that would still be around, and this part of history was lost.
right.
But it just, I don't know, it didn't really seem to hit. And then I had this
Mm.
other idea years ago about an animal story similar. Well, why don't I just mesh that together? And I'm still
Yeah,
tweaking.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, a lot of times, like, as long as you've got your notes for the something that you've thought of years ago, you can always utilize that.
Yeah,
Um, like when I was doing Incredi-Girl, right? So when we decided to build the Plunge universe, it was like, you know what? I should. I've got all these other friggin' stories, one shots lying around. What if I just bring all those characters together into this one world? That way you can like rewrite them, tweak them a bit so they work together in that one setting.
yeah,
Right? Because then now you're like saving yourself so much stress trying to build a whole new world for each little thing. Whereas now you can
yeah,
say, well, they all live in this Plunge universe, right? So
yeah,
I had something like the Templeton, like the supernatural hell hell based soul collector, right? So it's like, well,
yeah,
you know what? Rather than create a whole world for that, what I can do is bring it so the kids are his kids are part of the all ages sort of read, but he
yes, yeah,
is part of the more mature read. But at least the kids of him, so the world can interact when there's background stories. But otherwise, if you're always trying to create new things over and over again, it can be interesting. But if you're
Yeah.
trying to build a bigger world, it can be a bit tough. And I think, when here's the thing, right? So, I mean, we've got this coming up next, for what is it for my comic, right? So when we're doing this story here, right? With this, we're building like a whole new. It's a short stories, right? Two of them, right? So you end up building two new worlds. But then I thought, like, you know what? If you have these short stories, what if somebody decides, why don't I take that on and write, carry that story on?
Yeah.
So you only give them a little bit of a story without building a whole universe, so that that person can build on that. So say if you wanted to go, okay, you know what? I love to play around with this, but it's happening in my place, like it's happening in Dunedin, right? And so I can
Yeah.
play with the Dunedin people. What's happening, and if I'm doing it in France, then I can have that, same concept, Robot Nation happening in France. And now you're allowing other people to write on it, but you expand the universe as they expand on it. But you're not recreating that universe, so it makes it
Yeah.
easier. But now you you've got other works you're doing with Freak and stuff. And
Yeah.
how is the world building process for that?
Well, I never used to world build. I used to like make it up on the fly. And it's just so stressful working like that. So I think
Yeah.
probably the last couple of freak books I started actually thinking about, like as I'm writing, sort of how things lead naturally together. But
Mm.
what I do, I've actually have started like world building properly. So I've actually got my little freak Bible here. So
Right.
in it I've got my thumbnails,
Yeah.
but I've drawn little things like where are we? Like little street corners.
Excellent.
Um, and sort of street views. I've
Mm.
started doing a lot of that sort of stuff, um, and I've done like billboards.
Right. Because these are going
Like
to
a
make
lot
it
of
easier
this.
later on, right? Because when you
Oh
go,
yeah,
well, when you walk around that corner, oh, that's there. What was in that corner? That's there. It's like it's
yeah,
so much easier to go to if you've got a Bible.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, like it's probably stuff that's never going to see the light of day, but it's
Yeah.
more for my reference so that I can look back and go, oh, that's what that street corner's got to look like. That's how tall those buildings going to be. This
Yeah.
is how it all sort of fits in. Yeah, it's more for my reference, but if it sees the light of day, it's good and fine. But it's more for me just to keep my head sort of in that world
Mm.
as I'm working.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I work with artists, so I don't really, I don't do that sort of like drawing parts of it. But I do kind of go, you know what? This is the creatures that I want them to look like. So they're there, drawing it and stuff. And they'll, the artist will have, just like yourself, have a little bit of notes and stuff and what I'm going to do on this page. And
yeah,
like there's been like the last couple pages of the second story in the Robot Nation. I just said to actually 4 pages, I think it was. It's like I haven't done the script yet. I haven't done the dialogue yet. But here's how it's set up. So I'll go. There's the last 6 pages, I think it was. I said this is how it will be, and you carry on working, and I'll do the script right when I get it back, or I'll send it to you when I'm ready. And I think when that's what I like about the fact that when you have art, when you work with artists, you guys can visualize what is in the word, but
yeah,
also but if you're a creator artist, it's quite different because you're drawing up as you're thinking of the story.
yeah,
So what has that
yeah.
been like? You kind of think, like you said, some of the pieces there. What's that been like where you're the writer on the actual artwork?
Oh, I mean, it makes life easy, really.
Mm.
You don't have to sort of try and think about other people's ideas or try and guess where they're coming from. So you can just
Yeah.
kind of go, I'm doing this for this reason. Like you do have to think a lot about how the readers are going to see it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's good because you don't have to worry about how other people's interpretation, but at the same time, you do have to worry about how, because all the onus comes back onto you. You can't go, oh, well, it was the writer that did that all
Yeah.
funny, or you can't blame other. You have to like take all the heat if something doesn't look good, or if something
Right.
doesn't flow, or the dialogue's all iffy, and yeah.
Yeah, I had this thing with when I sent out I sent out a review page, and what was it? I think it was one of these page. Let me just find that page. I'm sorry for zooming through, but I don't want to give away the stories too much. But there was a little piece here, and gosh, I can't remember what page it was on now. But one of the reviewers said it looks like, oh, this is the one. So he goes, oh, it looks like her, it's the same character like his missus, right? The guy
Right,
here,
yeah.
I'm sorry, this guy here on the left, was my left, your guy's right, I think. It's his missus that's there. And I said, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to change that. So I went in and changed the text afterwards,
Yeah.
and to say that it's not the missus, to really make it like stand out. But like I hadn't picked it up, and so I went and actually put out that this is a different area. It's not the same place, because it looks like he's just
Yeah.
going to the same thing. If you look at the artwork, it looks like it's almost the same sort of area because
Mm.
of the tree and because of the ground, but it's actually a different area altogether. So I
Yeah.
can't blame, I can't say that's the artist's fault, because the artist is doing what it is. But I'm the letterer on that, and I kind of missed the boat by not saying this is a different area, like saying in town or down the street, this is there.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think, it's weird. Like you can try to edit something so much, yet still miss it, you know.
Yeah.
And but yeah, having another eye on that was really cool. But
Yeah.
this is your third sort of with raw raw steel. It's your third sort of project that you're doing, or world building
Yeah.
process, or
Yeah.
is it like
It's
more than that?
it's been ongoing, but it is the third thing. So I've got Freak and I've got Homerville, and yeah,
Yeah,
Raw Steel's kind of my third thing, but it's
right.
it's more all ages. So I've really got to. It's more of a challenge because when I'm doing Freak or Homerville, I can just let it all out and go as violent and as dark as I want.
Mm,
But the challenge with Raw Steel is I have to dial a lot of that back
mm,
and actually, think, oh, maybe a 10-year-old's going to read this, so severed heads flying around the room probably isn't going to work. So I really
yeah,
have to. It's nice because it's that a little bit of restrictions, a bit of a challenge, and I think
yeah,
artists and writers need that challenge to evolve. So
mm,
people say that restrictions tighten you in, but sometimes you kind of need that just to
yeah.
yeah
You need a boundary to work within, because if
yeah
if there's no boundaries, you just like you get confused, like you confuse yourself.
yeah
Because I think if you know, like it's like knowing how many pages you're going to do, right? And you go,
yeah
okay, I'm only going to do this many pages. You can actually work out, plan out, like on this
yeah
page this happens, that page that happens, and it's sorted. And but if you don't do that, it can expand and expand, and by the end of it, you're like, why did I
yeah
have to? How come
yeah
I got so many pages to do? Well, that's
yeah
because you didn't put a little, boundary around you to say this is the
yeah
page count.
yeah
And I've run into problems with that, where I've like, you know, I hadn't really went, bang, this is how much I want to do for this. And it ended up being like a freaking 90-page story, because I should have
yeah
stuck with like at least 12 pages, or just like a 30-page one shot.
yeah
But and it expanded, and I just, because I felt like the story called for it, when I could have restricted myself so much
yeah
and did it. But then I think sometimes you got to let yourself expand a bit, because
yeah yeah
some stories deserve to get a bigger picture and a wider sort of story than others. And have you found that, like,
oh
because you,
yeah
you did
yeah
Freak, right? And then
oh
you've
yeah
got like,
yeah
you have to about book 3 on Freak.
yeah yeah so with Freak I'd went right, it's going to be a graphic novel, so I just went, I'm going to put everything that I can in
Yeah,
there, put no restrictions on it. And now reading back at that, now I've actually chosen to go comic series with it. And now
yeah,
sort of reading back through the first and second parts, like, I mean, I've got like 3 pages of talking heads here. Like, I could have put
Yeah.
that down to one. It didn't necessarily need to have 3 pages of 2 frames of people
Yeah.
talking. So it's like putting those restrictions on. So I'm going to 24 pages per issue now,
Mm,
maybe 28, 30.
yeah.
But I've got that restriction now, and it means I have to be a bit more economic with my time. I have to sort of in my head go, right, I don't need to have 10 pages of 2 guys talking.
Yeah.
I could do that in 1 page to get that little bit of exposition to lead into the next thing. I
Yeah.
know what people come to my books to read. They want to see carnage. So I
Yeah.
need to go, right, I need to have a bit of exposition, carnage, and a little bit of follow into the next thing. That's sort of my formula with how I work now.
Yeah. So it's big. I mean, you already know your audience, like who your audience are by this point, right? And what they're
Yeah,
after, and so that's a good
yeah,
thing, because
yeah,
if you know your audience and if you know the type of people that read your book, then you're there to provide for that. And I think a lot of times we can see that that's not what's happening in the in the
yeah,
mainstream, and so
yeah,
they've lost the audience they already had,
yeah.
chasing after the audience they never had or never will
Yes,
have,
yeah,
because those audience are already somewhere else. And so I mean that's why, like, I think for us in the indie scene, it's like we're putting all our into it. Even today, like, I think this morning Ben Dunn said, what would you do to save the comic industry? I said, look, there's no point trying to save them, because the indies are already doing what
yeah,
everybody wants them to do. So if
yeah,
they've dropped the ball, we can pick it up and put everything out there, and we can basically go, we're going to tell you the best story that we can tell, and we're
yeah,
going to give it
absolutely.
our
Yeah,
everything, put our neck on the line, on the chopping block, and say, look, we're doing everything in the to entertain you, and we deserve your eyes on our books, because we're putting all this effort in, and we don't have anybody backing us up, right? So,
yeah,
if you're in the mainstream, you have, like, your big daddy Marvel and DC just saying, oh, just go do that book now. Go do that book now. Doesn't mean,
yeah,
oh, that one failed. Oh, don't worry about it. Let's go do that one now. Whereas we,
yes, yeah,
if it's do or die each book, because we're trying to, get the audience and get the audience to stay with us all the way. And I
yeah,
think, you know, I, it's like being pilgrims, right? For us, like, not pilgrims. What is it called? Pioneers, right? For ourselves.
yes, yeah,
We're the pioneers in the indie scene, trying to break out and do something interesting that hasn't been seen. Because if you look at Marvel and DC, all they do is superhero books, right? And I do,
yeah, yeah,
and I've done a superhero book, and there are superhero characters in that book, but it's unique to what that world is.
yeah,
But that's all Marvel and DC do: is superheroes,
yeah,
superpowers, costume things. Whereas we can do whatever we want, because we don't have any restrictions to it. Like, you could do
no,
raw metal, and you build your own universe without somebody going,
yeah,
yeah, I think you should do this a bit more. You should do that,
yeah,
because it's all on you.
yeah. Freak makes more money. Go to Freak. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's like, if you're willing to, you know give indies a chance, then you're gonna get to read something interesting. You're not gonna get the same old. And I find that the more I look at what's coming out, like, it's so interesting, right? So I want to show you something I found really cool. That was shared with me. Where is it? By which one is it? Hold on. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Hell Her Way, right? So this is Hell Her Way, and this is on Indiegogo. Is it Indiegogo? It's on Kickstarter right now. So this is a R18 channel, guys. So in case you go, oh, what's going on, right? This is not for kids, right? So this is Hell Her Way.
yeah,
It's they're doing pretty good. Like, they will ask for 2K, right? 2.5K.
yeah.
They got 6.8, right?
Oh,
That's New
they're
Zealand
doing all right.
dollars.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. This is a mature thing, and I saw this and I was like, I love this, because me. I've just mentioned about Templeton. I like the whole succubus sort of rulership, demons and angels and stuff. And I thought this is a really cool. It's a no holds barred. Dan Santon falls in love twice, but is she just being exploited for her power, right? So it's kind of weird. Like I think the idea here is that, let me just go back up here. This is issue 1, right? I love this logo.
It's quite
What do you
cool.
think of
It's
this
got that.
logo?
It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I'll show you this why I like this logo, because I have I love the tail logo because I've got that for one of my books, which is Templeton, right? So Templeton's got a logo like that as well. A tail coming, but it's totally different art style for that. And but this is, it's a pretty full on, full on comic book, and that's what's, people like the mature sort of content that independent comics offers, right?
Yeah.
You can you can get the sexy sort of, like here on the left you got the cover A, you get a regular, you get a print copy, it's about $20, and you get bundle deals, stretch goals, and so on. It's kind of a unique art style, character design wise. So you got erotic art, comedy, stories of Satan, hell, irreverent fantasy, romantic comedies, multiverse stories, right? And that's who it's for, right? People who like that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
they're not pulling any punches. And
No.
Soltara Comics, you got comic, cover A, Virgin Nude, so it's that one with the Virgin.
Yeah.
So you got all that, but I like, they've got the whole costume look as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
that
quite
that
cool.
allows you to see something unique about that they're putting a costume on her. This kind of reminds me of who's it? Is it Avatar? Avatar Press, that they do the more mature
Oh.
content stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
The guys that put out the Crossed, from Garth Ennis, they do
Yes.
some
Yes. Yeah.
interesting stuff there. And I it's kind of, it's really cool to see, like I said, like you don't really need to read interesting, hope for the mainstream to pick up on something interesting when there's
Yeah.
independent uh, creators out here already doing that interesting stuff. All you got to do is
Yeah.
bring your, look, bring your eyes to it. Like yourself, you've got all this cool stuff coming out. You're working on, as long as you get people coming to you and be able to share that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, then you're not going to be, people are going, oh, why aren't they telling this story over there?
Yeah.
Then I
Yeah.
can see it in my shops. It's like, well, if you go out to indies and support, like people like yourself and myself, then you'll get more of it. It'll get
Yeah.
faster,
Yeah.
and if there's more money behind it, you can, you know, probably end up having
Yeah.
somebody else work on it as well to make the process faster. So you're not like spending 6 months, a year, just trying to get that artwork together, right? Or a
Yeah.
year, depending on how long the book is. Because I think it's gotten to a point for what I think with the Wednesday thing is right there. Like, I mean, the Wednesday collector, right? Wednesday, you got to be at the shop, at the comic shop, to get your
Yeah.
Wednesday comic, and you sort of become addicted to it. I used to be like that,
Yeah.
years ago. Every Friday, I must go to town to get my comics for that month.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's about 5 different comics from Marvel that I'll have to pick up. And then again,
Yeah.
if like
Yeah.
the other guy goes, "Oh, try this one," okay, oh yeah, shove it in there. It doesn't matter. You know,
Yeah.
I've got this. I've got $60 to spend. So whatever comic you can, if I've got enough of what I want, and I've still got a couple of bucks left over, well, add something else to it. And I think
Yes. Yeah.
that Wednesday thing is slowly getting deteriorated
Yeah.
because of what they're doing to the mainstream comics scene. But
Yeah.
then, like I said, the indies are out here doing a lot. If you start looking at what the independent creators are doing, there is so much amazing stuff out there. Now, getting back to raw steel, how many pages are you looking at doing, and how many issues are you looking at? We were talking about
I mean,
boundaries before.
I'm looking probably at about 24 pages. I mean, I'm going to stick to that 24-page formula. Um, Probably 10 issues. Like, it's not going to be a massive series. I think it's going to start, middle, end. I don't want it to be
Mm,
have a start, middle, and then we'll just keep going until we lose interest. Like, I'd rather start, middle, end, finish
yeah,
strong, and then there could be potential for a sequel or something later on.
Yeah,
But I think 24 pages, 10 issues,
yeah.
nice short series. Yeah. Whereas Freak, I'm probably looking at about 35 issues for that one. Yeah, 35. And I like to have a good start, middle, end. Keep it concise, keep it clean. Otherwise, you get run into issues where you've got, it could have ended at issue 30 and issue 100. It's still dragging its dead leg along, sort of thing. I think it's, yeah.
Okay. Give me one sec.
Yep, no worries.
I'm just trying to reply to this email from Mike. I'll get him on next week.
Oh, okay, no worries.
He got caught up with something. Yeah. So
Yeah.
with 10 issues, do you think it's enough to work around, or do you think it might be too
Well,
much,
I mean,
or how you
it's
take the
10
stories?
it's 10 for now. I think as I'm working, I might go, actually, this story point needs a bit more attention. Maybe we'll bump it up to 12 issues, or
Right.
there's probably too much of this going on. Maybe we need to knock it down to 8. Like I'm going back, I'm reworking issue 1 because the intro is kind of exposition heavy, but the art style that I had doesn't match with the rest of it. Like I was going to go for like an Aztec Egyptian sort of telling of the history of how things got to where they are, but then the rest of it were quite gritty and realistic. It was just too. So I'm actually got to rework all that, and it's going to flow a lot better, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's one of those things like I might go through and go, right, this needs more attention, that needs
Mm.
less. And it might end up being 10's probably the perfect amount, or it might be that maybe 15's probably the number that I should be punching
Cool.
for. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm an
you
indie, I
don't
can do
know.
what I want.
Yeah, you don't know. Like if you're like halfway through, like say about issue 3 or 4, and then you realize that your people who are reading it and buying it going, I like that character. It would be
Yeah,
cool to see. What are you? Where are you going with that character? And then you got to go.
yeah,
Ah, okay. Now we're going to add a bit more to it, or do it like add a little sidetrack. 0.5, whatever they call it, or maybe add an extra issue to it just to concentrate on that. And so do you think you'd be open to doing that if your readers went, okay, this is what we want, or
Oh
would you
yeah,
go
yeah.
just expand it late afterwards rather than put it on
Um,
in time?
I mean, I quite like what Garth Ennis did with the Preacher series. Like he did like a whole run through of the Preacher, and then he
Yeah,
took a break for a while, and he focused on um, was it Cassidy the vampire? He focused on
yeah,
Cassidy for an issue, then he focused on the Saint of Killers for another issue, and he just
yeah.
like focused on the background characters for a spell, and then went back to
Mm-hmm.
the main story. So I mean, there's always options for that. So
Yeah,
I think as I'm writing, what I've started doing is actually writing each character's life and history.
yeah.
So, and it's probably one of those things never gets seen, but if I decide later on, this character needs an issue all about them, I've got something in my file that I can just go, right, this has got to become that issue.
All right. Well, we've got Mike with us. So I thought he might be way too busy for this week. So I mean,
Yeah.
but he's able to join us. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to introduce you to Michael BOTUR, writer, of course, as we said before, of Blood Alcohol and The Devil Took Her. Two of the 3 books I actually own that is written by him. Um, are we able to hear you, Mike? I'm just wondering if can you hear us?
How's my sound? How's my volume, guys?
Perfect.
Cool. Hey, I don't mean to gate crash. Hey, I'm really sorry I wasn't on earlier. Shit going on. Hey, Justin. Kia
Hey,
ora.
how's it going?
Good.
It's all good. So, how about you just introduce yourself there, Mike, and we'll carry on and I'll bring you on and we'll talk about what's going on with you. All right.
So I'm a fiction writer, and I am what they call an emerging screenwriter. So I've entered the world of screenwriting in hopes of getting some of my horror stories adapted into film. I spent 15 years writing literary fiction and poetry, but that genre is a little bit boring and takes itself too seriously, and horror is way more fun and has way more likelihood of becoming film. So yeah, in fact, one of the reasons I wasn't on before is I was working on an outline for adapting a short story into film, hopefully.
Excellent. All right,
Nice,
so
nice.
let me just pop it out there. Justin, would you like to ask some questions for us of Michael?
Yeah, so you've started with obviously writing novels and that, and now you're going into screenwriting. How would you say that the process is different? Is there a different
Oh,
process to that?
yeah, it's well, I mean, scripts and screenplays, they're written in 12-point Courier font, this ugly, naked, brutally raw font that looks like it came off a typewriter because it forces you to compress the story down to, yeah, like what Ari's holding up. It forces you to compress it down to bare bones. And you have to pick exactly the right words. Yeah, like the, what screenplay is that, mate?
This is Power's script book. It's a comic for the comic book,
Mm.
but I also have other script books like for Johnny Mnemonic.
Mm.
But yeah, it's the whole because they've got it sussed out that like an A4, it's a page per minute. So whatever you're writing in there, whatever however what you're doing, by the way you time it out, it's a page per minute.
Yeah, it's an interesting art. Like anyone who wants to get better at their skill, whether you play rugby, whether you play netball, whether you run a business, whether you're a carver or something, you can always get better, and you can always improve until you die, and you can always branch into closely related fields. So yeah, I've really enjoyed being a beginner in screenwriting. For the last 2 or 3 years, I've been asking really naive questions of people, and yeah, I finally speak the language, which is cool. Um, yeah, so I'm emerging, and I get these emails popping into my inbox with real directors who have directed real movies who want to talk about adaptations, and so I need to hand them back the what they call the coverage. So I need to hand them back the scripts and the outlines, and if I get it wrong, I'll learn from getting it wrong. So yeah, I'm halfway through my life. I'm about to turn 40, and yeah, it's cool being a beginner. I like the challenge.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It's like because I mean, going from novel writing to just describing things rather than detailing things. There's a difference between like detailing and there's a different, or just to describe. So what has that process been like? Going from like, putting words in and expanding on that, whereas you got to now go, this, it happens here and that character's there and now this is what they say. How's that been like, that
Well,
process?
one of the most brutal things I've noticed is if you're trying to break into screen stuff and getting films made, the people with the power, the people that hold the purse strings, so that's firstly producers and and then directors as well. They won't tell you to cross out pages or lines or chapters. They would disregard an entire thing. Like you
Yeah,
can tell them about a novel that took you more than a year to write, and they'll go, "Oh yeah, that's not for us."
yeah,
And yeah, so you have to be prepared to accept that. And I'm finding out, yeah, just certain things will get producers interested in them at
mm,
certain times. The novel has its place, and God, how many times I tell people like at least once a week, there's no money in novel writing in New Zealand. Um, there are a few rare exceptions, but yeah, there's
yeah,
no money in novels, eh? So I'm doing a smart thing.
yeah. So I've just put up
Yeah.
this page here, like for a script, right? This is a comic book script and how I work on it. And so, very short description for that panel, like like a sentence. And then you do the dialogue and stuff, and then you move on. Or some of them, like you don't even have a dialogue at all, depending on how you do it. So, then you give it to you give it to the artist, and this is all now imagine that as a minute of talking in a film script, right? that's that's not enough. That'll be cut down to at least about 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So, but the other thing is with the idea of like film, it's kind of close to comic books, but it isn't, because unlike comic books, you don't have to pay for each set, right? You don't have to just pay for materials for that set. You just come up with you just draw it and it's there. Whereas if you're like, when you're doing films, right, you got to think about how much money and where the setting, where the location is, who's going to be there, how many characters are there, how much are going to be paid for them. And I think the producer, right, is going to be going, this is our budget today for this, and I think we're going to have to chuck this part out and chuck that part out. Have you run across that yet?
Things being brutally cut by producers.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten that far. I can tell you guys about a good topic, which will a podcast I was just listening to. Like half the reason I was late for this interview, I got carried away by a podcast. This will get you guys talking. On the subject of money and things going wrong and producers interfering with a creative vision. Just been listening to a podcast called the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast.
Right.
They're 350 podcast episodes deep. They've done heaps and they've interviewed so many Hollywood screenwriters. The one I was listening to was about the 2005 Beowulf and Grendel film. So not the Robert Zemeckis one, the live action one, which had Gerard Butler in it before he was Mr. 300. And so they're talking about how that had a real production hell. Yeah, and it's got Stellan Skarsgård in it, and the guy who played the Hound in Game of Thrones. And they're talking about so producers messing with the budget on this Beowulf and Grendel live action movie. Nordic Viking warships with holes in them sinking in the glacier lakes when they were trying to film. All these stones being thrown up by the wind and shattering the windshields of all the cars that they needed to get around the sets. So many hellish things, just like bringing all these unanticipated costs to the set. It's really fascinating. Yeah. Oh, and injuries. The guy who was blessing the entire film slipped over with a pagan ceremony. He slipped over on a rock and freaking, busted his head on the first day. So that's not a good omen. Yeah.
No.
All right, so this is it here. We'll watch it while, carry on talking. We'll just watch it. This is the one it's about. So Beowulf and Grendel. I can't remember if I've seen this. So
I gotta admit,
it's really good. It is really good.
Cool. I haven't seen it. I've definitely seen the Robert Zemeckis animated one, which I love.
Yeah.
So there's a doco about this. There's a doco about how it was production hell. Yeah.
Have you heard of the Snyderverse? Have you heard of what happened in DC with Zack Snyder and the Snyderverse?
Can you tell the viewers the story, Justin?
Well, okay, so we've all seen Man of Steel, yeah, and we watched, and there was Batman versus Superman that came out afterwards. It came out sort of after a lot of Marvel movies came out, and DC in the head went, "Oh, we want fun, and we want fun like Marvel." So they completely bottomed out Batman v Superman. They were already filming the Justice League. Personal tragedy happened to Zack Snyder. His daughter committed suicide. So they used that as an opportunity to get him out of that movie. Joss Whedon took over Justice League, turned it into that abomination that we've seen at the movie theaters. And now they've sort of realized that, actually, the fans actually liked the more serious approach and released the Snyder Cut. And now all of us fans, we want the rest of this, but it's too late now. And that was just studio going, "Oh, hang on, Marvel are doing all this really fun, colourful stuff. Let's do that." And
however,
it's beaten
Marvel in the butt, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
and
just that
now,
whole happy
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
I
yeah,
could name.
they were too busy chasing. Yeah,
And then
agree, Michael.
occasionally you get entire movies that never see the light of day because
yeah,
of this behind the scenes fighting.
BOTUR.
I've always wanted to see a movie called Blackwater Transit. So the American History X director, American History X is a
Yeah,
terrific
Yeah,
film, and Tony Kaye is a great director. He's a difficult guy, right? And the studio is difficult too. And the studio and Tony Kaye clashed so much on this 2009-ish film called Blackwater Transit with Carl Urban,
yeah. I
the
was just
Kiwi
thinking of that.
actor.
It's like
yeah.
They clashed so much that the film was never released. So yeah, they just spent millions on it and just buried it. It doesn't exist. We'll never see it,
that's
which is messed
that's the
up.
DC
thing.
did that
Like
with
I mean,
Batgirl as well.
well, not only
No
just that,
way.
they did that. They
So
did that with Coyote, Roadrunner and Coyote with John Cena. It was like it was going to be shelved. The movie's made, like it's made, right? And they were going to like write it off as a text write, but there was like a huge backlash from directors going, you know what? How do we know that our films are going to be getting this treatment? What if we go and work for DC and next thing you know, Warner's, I should say,
hmm.
and what if our film
Yeah,
get right up? There's no promise, there's no guarantee, there's no contract anymore. If you make a movie with these guys, it won't be just written off, and you never see it.
yeah,
And so, why would you want to go work for Warner's, knowing that in the back of our heads, they will just actually, if it's finished movie, even that they'll just brush it aside.
exit.
And
Yeah,
so now, Coyote is back on. We're going to actually get to see it. Yeah.
Interesting.
nice, nice.
Fun, man. How would you feel as a creative if, a higher power just completely buried your work? Yeah, and you'd still get paid for it. You'd feel really hollow and empty. Yeah,
Well,
you wouldn't feel good about it.
it's like you put all
That
your
happened.
effort into it, right? And like and then it doesn't happen. Like I've got about 4 comic books. They're just sitting there.
Hmm.
That like the first issues incomplete. That like one's got about 30 pages done. I need 2 more pages done to complete it. No artist on it. Now I've got to go find someone else to finish that off before I can do the other 2 episodes. I've got 8 issues. I've got a comic that's 8 issues long, right? First issue done. No ink's done on it. The artist walked off it. Another one, same deal. I'm like, I've got 3 comics that I've got started off on
Hmm.
and not finished. And it's just sitting there. It's like my baby. Nobody's going to be able to see it unless I get heaps of money and I go and ask somebody to please come and finish this off. And it's like, what the hell am I doing anymore? And this, I think, that's why I can see why these filmmakers are going. I'm not going to go for these work for these guys. The
Hmm.
other thing is that even Warner's, right? So they've been like sort of Marvel. They've had the guy of the Continental, the Black American, Black
Lance Reddick.
no. It's the director from. Let me find it. I think I was going to bring it up on our.
I know. I was listening to a podcast with him earlier, and the way he did,
Okay,
like Dead Presidents, was that one of his films and stuff like that? A bunch of action films, eh?
yeah. Let me see if this is the one. I think.
Expendable? No, not Expendables 2, but yeah. He was interviewed on the same podcast, the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast, which is very good.
Okay, so
Alphonse something?
here we
What's
go.
his name?
What was his name? One sec. Here we go. It's the Book of Eli, right? So I was going to bring
All
this up
Oh,
right.
yeah.
on I think case, but let me show you this. So he actually went to, have a listen to this thing. All right.
I've been in
Albert Hughes. Right.
superhero movies a couple of times, but I always felt uncomfortable because I knew it was a system. And they're very nice. And I went through a long process. In fact, I broke down. I still have this from a year and a half ago, where I broke down all their movies, like I put them in a spreadsheet and broke down the box office, the Rotten Tomato scores, where the VFX. I ranked the VFX. I had to do a deep dive on them, and I got not very close, halfway through the process, and I go, nah, I would implode from kind of the controlled nature of that world and not being able to do what I do. And I wouldn't understand why a real filmmaker would want to, be in that system. I would understand why up and comers would, which they do a good job of like finding people at the right time. But I think I would implode. And there wasn't one character I was interested in. All the others I really want. And there were 2 other opportunities that I just know it's a bad situation. You never want to be somewhere you're not truly wanted. You know, you're not truly wanted for what you do.
Does it rhyme with Glade? Does it?
That smells like it's on the right trail.
Nailed it. Fan of that character. We love that character. But you're saying like within the parameters, you couldn't do what you do best. You felt.
I think there's a thing that is rarely talked about in Hollywood when it comes to the difference. To me, there's a difference between a director and a filmmaker. A filmmaker, it's all encompassing with their touches on that film. That's a filmmaker to me. And there are filmmakers like, well, a producer can be a filmmaker too. You know, a cameraman is a filmmaker. You know, but a rock star cameraman, right? A director is the one who just comes and calls action and leaves and doesn't really checks in on the edit every once in a while. You know, you've seen a million of those. So if you're getting hired for you and what you do and what you bring, I've been in a situation more recently where I started getting poked and prodded, and I'm like, oh, they didn't really want what I do. I was checking a box for them, and this is not going to work out. And it didn't work out. I had to quit that job. Like I smelled it pretty early, and I'm like, no, I'm not here for this. Like,
I love though that you literally have a chart that like, so that was like when you were like really seriously considering getting involved and you're like, let me really like think about this meticulously, how it succeeded or hasn't for other folks and if it would work for me. And like, that's a degree of like research you did, not even just into the project, but into
well, this came out of like what this did for me is like know who your daddy is. Your daddy has never failed. That the producer who does this is the most successful producer in Hollywood history with the most successful studio in Hollywood history.
Right.
So if I'm going to walk into that, I have to drop my ego and go, are you ready for this? Like that's daddy, and daddy's going to have some wants. And so that was a process I had to go through. You know?
Is that us?
Yeah, I mean that's weird, isn't it? Like, I mean, like you've got a guy who's done a really good, acceptable movie, yet he's deciding what is worth him working on, because when you go to work for somebody like Warner's and Marvel's, they want a director. They don't want a filmmaker because they already have the film.
Yeah.
They have all the characters worked out. They actually already have the script worked out. So you're just basically the person who's just coming in to cook the meal, right? Put it all together. But I think that's something interesting to see where you've got somebody at his level thinking, okay, yeah, I could get a good money and job. I'm just okay. They want a director, not a filmmaker like me. So, with your books, right? So we were talking earlier about world building and stuff, and there's a lot of I mean, the stories that I've read and you've talked about, they're basically based in New Zealand, right? So, have you, when you're writing these scripts here, are they asking, are they saying, well, can you do it right, put it elsewhere, or is it okay if you just keep it in New Zealand with
I've only been talking to Kiwis so far, and most people are happy with New Zealand content. And the Devil Took Her book, story number 6, the title story, it's one of the most popular. People always tell me that they love it. It was moderately hard to write. So it's set in inland California. So inland from San Fran, Stockton, Sacramento, all around there. There's one Kiwi director called Gary Davies who really wants to see an outline and a script for it. And we briefly mulled over changing the location to New Zealand, but nah, the USA makes a lot more sense because it's just got a lot of American stuff in the story. So yeah, it'd be awesome to sell that option to the States. There's a guy called Guy McDowell who's a Wellington screenwriter who I've should have conversations with soon, and he's in the interesting position where he sold a feature film script to the States, like to an American producer, maybe around 2015, and it hasn't been made. But yeah, he's got that interesting thing where like he's sort of penetrated the States, and he's got that achievement. They haven't made it yet, so I don't know how he feels about that. Like, could well never get made, but yeah, it's an achievement.
That's the other thing, isn't it? Like you can actually sell a script and it'll sit there forever. You know, I mean, like I had the other opposite thing where where my outline went to a studio, and it ended up, yes, thank you very much, bye. And then I saw the film. We saw it a year later, get made in New Zealand. The same outline, the same idea, the same everything by the same studio. That's it. They denied it. And then they copied the same thing and made it in Australia as well. And so I get my my kind of like my agent dude come up, go, hey, I just saw the movie. I just saw our movie. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like this, check this out, this. I'm like, oh. It's like they love the idea, they love the outline, they loved everything, but they're like, no. And then suddenly the movie's made. And I'm like, oh, great. So I spent all that time writing up spec script. And I think it took me 3 weeks to write it. And, you know, and it's gone. And, you know, but that's the other thing. So it can be taken, but not only that, they can buy the script and it'll just sit there, right? And you can never do anything with it because you don't own it anymore, and they won't do anything with it. So it's in limbo forever. It's like, you know, being in a Catholic limbo, you know, not in heaven, not in hell, in the freaking middle, you know. It's like at the end of the day, you wish like you'd never sent it. It would have been much better off not sending it and would have kept it. But these are all the processes of Hollywood, right? I mean, it's all the processes and part and parcel of this whole world that we, you know, walk into. And I think that's what sort of made me go, you know, I would love to just carry on doing comics and be happy with that, even though I've got a film background in film and all that. But so is this one is that one story that you're looking at turning into you know, short form, turning into? Are you doing it into a short film, or are you talking into a feature length? How are you working on that?
Yeah, really just aiming for features. Not terribly interested in short films. I consider them to be a stepping stone. But hey, I mean, all the directors, Justin and Aru, all the directors that we love, they all started out with short films.
Yeah,
you can't direct features without going through a short film. So yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but yeah, I think short films kind of die a lonely death. I don't think they get many views.
There is that whole, you know, VHS, right? You're horror, you know, you watch horror as well, like the whole VHS series, right? Where they put like five movies into this one feature film and they put it out, and you'll find that one or two are a dud, but the others are really good. But and those guys who do those ones break out, you know, and they get picked up and to do features. I'm watching a whole lot of like short films now getting remade by the direct, you know, the writers and creators of that. Into feature-length films, and because now they've got like a bit more money behind them to turn that short film into a feature. Have you noticed that? Because I saw a couple recently do that, and I was like, "Wait, what has he worked on?" Oh, that. I was like, "What's the same name?" It's like, "Oh, that goes based on that short film that came out 5 years ago, or 10 years ago." And
which ones are you thinking of, Aro?
There's a couple that came out. Let me have a look. There was, where are we? Let me just have a look here.
And,
what is the name of that? I think
we could talk about anthologies for a bit, eh? Anthologies have their place. They certainly do. Ant Timpson started out with anthologies, who's a very successful Kiwi horror director.
Yeah.
The ABCs of Death, he was on that.
Yeah, I mean, that just pops up. That's what I mean. The anthologies, like, I mean, I kind of thought like, you know, VHS thing, but like, yeah, you're right. Anthologies of short films, because with those ones, they pick a theme, right? And so, what is it, like ABC? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, the ABCs of Death. And TVNZ made, I think, 2 seasons of horror anthology and stuck it on late at night called Beyond the Veil. So credit to them for having a go with that. Yeah.
So
I never watched that, but
look at this.
it's on my list.
Or was it like Beyond the Veil?
Yeah, Māori horror stories, and then I think, if I'm getting this right, I think the second season, or at least another thing produced by TVNZ, had more sort of cultural diversity. So they had a Filipino story and like a Samoan story. Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah. So you look at Ann Timpson here, right? So this took off really well. I think this was
So very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been meaning to watch this. It's when it came out. I still haven't got around to it yet, but I think it's probably something to do tonight. But this is based in New Zealand, right? And it's got Michael Ironside in it and everything. So is this actually made in New Zealand? So it's I think it's a
Pretty sure it's filmed in
M15.
Canada. It's like a co-Kiwi, Canadian production in it, I think.
Let's have a look. Where is it? It usually gives you details. Yeah, so United States, Canada, and New Zealand, Quebec.
It's quite distinctive. It's quite stylish. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I guess it broke even, but didn't make much money. But then again, you don't know if did it go to streaming or something like that? Because a lot of times these, like in the old days, it'll be go to video, but now it just goes to streaming, right? And you get to see these movies at streaming. If you miss out on, get back out here. If you miss out on like the theater, you get to see it on streaming. So Ann Timpson here, right? Kiwi bloke. So Housebound, ABCs of Death 2. He's got Mr. Organ. Now he's executive producing as well. So he's written 4, but directed 3. So I think we're, Shane was saying, one of our mates was saying that we're great exporters of horror movies, right? It's one of our greatest sort of exports when it comes to film type thing. And so now you've got Deathgasm Part 2, at crowdfunding level and coming out with that. I think it's over here. Death, Volume 1's here somewhere. Can't see it, but I mean, the first movie. So, are you looking forward to that? Deathgasm 2 when it comes out, Mike? Because that's our humor, right? It's kind of like it's our Kiwi humor. What did you think of the first one?
I liked that it exists. I'm going to sound like a total snob here. I like to keep. I don't know. I like to treat metal more seriously. I don't know. I should like it more. I respect that it exists, and I respect that it's got a following, and I donated to the crowdfunding on this one.
Nice.
One of the things I'm hoping to get made is a story about Dunedin black metal and a band that will do anything to get the attention of Varg Vikernes from Mayhem, the evil murderer from Mayhem.
Isn't he already gone? For those of you guys who don't know who that person is, he was considered to be the godfather of black death metal, black metal, and he caused so much pain and destruction in the short time he was on Earth. But
he's not dead.
Yeah.
Oh, Euronymous. Euronymous is the one who got
sorry,
killed.
I was talking about the other guy.
Varg is the murderer.
Varg is still alive. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah, so I watched a documentary on that, like, because I'm a metalhead, right? By seeing me, you won't know that, but and so for me, right, I love whenever metal becomes center stage in a horror film, because it's such a amazing genre that melts so well with horror. I picked up. Give me 1 second. I'll show you something.
Oh, it's the sound of horror, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was just able to pick up this today. I was so excited, right?
Oh, yes.
Queen of the
yes.
Dam.
Perfect.
It's got the greatest soundtrack ever.
Yeah.
Right? One of the
I would
best
agree with that.
soundtracks when it comes to heavy metal. I mean, for horror, right? Queen of the Dam.
Jonathan
And,
Davis.
Hey, is Jono's from Corn, right? Am I always getting it wrong?
Yeah.
It's Corn,
Yeah,
right?
he's from Corn. Yeah.
And there's such amazing like songs on this. It's like, you know, but like I saw that, I was like, yeah, I gotta have that because it's not in my collection. But I also got this today as well. What do you reckon, Mike?
Oh, cool. Alex Proyas.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Dark City.
Yeah,
That's
that's so
good
good.
shit.
Yeah, that's good as
Dark
well.
City, you know, before Matrix, right?
Yeah, it collided with Matrix, and didn't it get buried by the Matrix sort of thing?
Yeah. Or was it like, did it come out first? I'm trying to think.
Probably did
It's a
come
couple
out
of years
first.
before, I think. Yeah, it's a couple of years
Yeah,
before,
and
I think.
it didn't pop off as much as it should have, but it's such a
Hmm.
classic. 98. So Matrix is when?
99?
Yeah, so a year
I think
before,
99. Yeah.
you know, and that kind of sucks because you have such a great movie. The whole, you know,
So
the whole.
unique.
Yeah, and by the way, iRobot and the Crow director, you can't go
Yeah.
wrong with someone who's worked on those two, man.
And
And,
Gods of Egypt.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
and
Gods of
Yeah.
Egypt.
is that the one that buried him though? That
It
didn't
might
work.
have. It was still
Gods of
good.
Egypt
It was
didn't-
still good, but
Yeah, but it wasn't. You know, people didn't drive out to watch it.
it was
But, I
fun.
mean-
It's a good fun movie. I quite enjoyed it.
I did too, because I think it's just people sort of like don't really know what to expect a lot of times. But I mean, I'm a great fan of Marvel, right? Like the whole, you know, mixing of this,
Deathblock.
right? So
Yeah.
I need to get the rest, but like I was able to pick these two up. Like I was at first and second season. Yeah, but here's something that's been done by anime, right? That it's such a classic manga first, of course, but anime. So let me bring this amazing thing up. Where are we? Gosh, I always forget with so many different things open all the time which one to think about. But give me one moment. Hey, talk about a bit about your books there, Michael, while I sort of set this up, right?
Cool. Well, I'll pull up blood alcohol and hold it in front of me. Hang on one moment. Yeah, so I worked harder on blood alcohol than anything I've ever worked on. Yeah, so it's 10 horror stories, and I wrote it when the last horror collection was still hot, when I was still marketing it and entering awards and promoting it and doing public readings and stuff. Yeah, so because I had really strong ideas for it, and I guess I was kind of running hot, or like just my mind was in the right place over last summer, and I think I got about eight ideas for stories that, you know, were complete or good enough to write. And then when I was getting close to the publication date that I'd set for myself, so I'd set Halloween this year as the publication date. Swapped a couple of stories out, took out a couple of stories that were a bit too weak, that just weren't good enough. One new thing about this is I worked with a dramaturge. So a dramaturge is a drama specialist. So the job of a dramaturge is to accentuate the conflict and the drama in a play or a film or a book. So I paid this screenwriter and director called Gregory King, who's associated with a few successful New Zealand films. I paid him to test my stories against. He's got very exacting taste. He calls a spade, and if he doesn't think that the drama is strong enough in a story, he would tell me to rewrite. So I had these sessions with him, often on a Tuesday morning, often at 7 a.m. my time, which was like 9 p.m. Berlin time, because he's over in Berlin with his family. Yeah, and it's good. And he challenged me to make my drafts as good as possible, because the drafts of all these stories wouldn't have been as strong. They would have been passable, but just not as strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I learned to be a good listener and to take advice and to push back on things that I really wanted to stand for, and to sometimes say no when I disagreed with his advice on a story. And a couple of times I got nothing but net. A couple of times I got the ball straight through the hoop without hitting the rim. And by that, I mean, I think 2 stories that I put in front of him, he was like, yep, thumbs up. This is fine. This is good. It impressed me. And then other ones like the title story, Blood Alcohol, that's what we started off with. And I remember being quite depressed at first because I thought the title story was brilliant and perfectly formed when I showed it to him. I was like, oh, he'll just love this. But no, it required tons of work. And I had to show it to him again months later and, to impress him. And so that can... Any of us who are artistic, we can do that with our artwork. We can get the attention of someone who's incredibly good at that artistic discipline and try and get them to give us the seal of approval, the thumbs up on the work of art. And it's good to challenge yourself like that. You learn so much.
Yeah, I think a lot of time people are too precious. Do you remember the time we were at when we first met, right? And there was a guy there, and
poetry.
And yeah, I think was it poetry, right? And the guy was there going something about like stories. Like, I just like to keep it to myself. I don't want to share it to the world because I'm not sure if they'll accept it or not. And it's it was really precious about it. I'm like, then why are you writing it, right?
Yeah, that's really amateur.
Yeah, it's like, why are you actually working on this if you don't want to share it? Because art is meant to be shared. It's a form of communication. You're communicating your ideas, your thoughts, your views, whatever. And then you want to say, I don't want anybody ever to see it. Then it's like, well, you're just wasting time. It doesn't really maybe it's just a hobby then. It's not really something you would do it to for career. It's just, it's like, kind of like a hobby writing, But yeah, you're right. I mean, like a lot of people, like, I mean, your first draft is, it's not going to be the, magic straight away.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, when I was doing like the Robot Nation, comic, like the short stories, I'd send it off and it'll come back and I'll rewrite it on the fly after I got the drawings back, the pencils. Once the pencils came back, I'd go, that looked really cool. So I must change the words to make it look really cool. Make it like whatever's there, not try to tell too much, with what the dialogue is, try to crisp it back. Whereas actually let the people what is that, dive into the images that are there and let that be their thing rather than me telling them what's there. And I think when you have an artist who understands it, and like director, right? If a director can understand that, they can actually, and also your editor, the guy who's editing, who can see it, can say, oh, that would work and that won't work, this will work. And it's such a cool process to actually go through working with other people. I think especially like you've been working, you write for yourself and have been writing for yourself for, for a long time now. When did you start start to look at getting, hey, I should get somebody else to like get involved with what I'm doing, to get whatever, pointers or whatever?
Just within the last few years. I haven't even mentioned Linda Nicol. There's a whole story about how I accidentally met Linda. She's about 20 years older than me. She wrote Secondhand Wedding, Kiwi film, and she wrote and directed Poppy, which is a Kiwi film that was in cinemas a couple of years ago. Linda's really experienced. Her brother is very famous. Her brother is Andrew Nicol, who directed Gattaca and The Truman Show.
I want to meet her. I actually want to meet Andrew because I love Andrew's work. Like, seriously, he was one of the people that I like. I think I might have done a write-up on him when I was doing film school. But Gattaca, dang, man.
Yeah, but Linda doesn't borrow off her brother's reputation at all. She's forged her own path. And one thing we got in common is she's a New Zealand literary fiction short story author. So back in the early 2000s, she put out 2 collections of short stories with publisher called Steel Roberts. Yeah, that's one of her films, and you know she sold that to Air New Zealand, and it gets played on the planes. And
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, she went over to Sundance last year, I think, or maybe
Yeah.
it was South by Southwest, or maybe both. Can't remember. So yeah, accidentally started. The first couple of things I put in front of Linda, she politely sort of said, you know, these aren't for me, or I can't fully get behind these. But yeah, she read that book, The Devil Took Her, my first horror story collection, and she's really discerning, eh? Like she sort of brushed to the side a number of the stories, but there's probably about 4 of them that she got really passionate about. So 2 in particular, she's given up a portion of her life to co-write the scripts with me, and she's doing a lot of the hard work with getting producers interested in them.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Man.
so it's really wonderful to have had the fortune to be getting to know Linda.
It's cool because I mean, like you get like if you look at what she's writing and what Andrew does, right? They're totally polar opposites. Andrew's a futurist, and he's when you look at like a Truman Show, totally futuristic, and the thought pattern and stuff. And here she is talking about kind of like human interest stories. I was looking at what she's done here with with Poppy being about Down syndrome, and what's the other one? There's the short film here, some on a you got like she's not aware that the dude's blind. Stuff like that, like a bit more human interest stories rather than like, someone trying to go into space like in Gattaca. And man, I love that show. But he's one of our most famous sci-fi writers, isn't he? Like filmmakers, Andrew Nichol.
Yeah, and in a pre kind of, not pre-internet, but what's a good way to describe it? Pre-social media age, back when things were done with phone calls and postage and that. Yeah.
Speaking to people.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Oh, In Time. We all saw In Time with Justin Timberlake.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I forgot about it in time, but yeah, 2011, when Justin was just coming into films, like trying to be an actor and stuff. And, there's a Gattaca, like I said, one of my favorite films, 9 out of 10. Uma Thurman, the other one that you guys might not know that it has where are you? Lord of War, right? I think he won an award for that or something, right? Wasn't it?
Oh, that was good. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was really
he
good.
won.
Didn't know it was him,
2
though.
wins. What are we?
Oh, the Turkish Film Critics Association Awards. Now
Yeah,
you know
best
you've made
foreign
it if
film.
you get one of those. The
Yeah,
Turkey
best
stuff.
foreign film. Most offensive male character, Nicolas Cage for the Wounds Film Critics. That's so cool. Yeah, you really want to see that. But excellence in filmmaking, yeah, National Board of Review USA. But
Nice.
there was one that I think because that's about a guy who friggin' sells weapons of destruction, right? Here's the one that is most reminds me of what happened in the last few months. Sim 1. Do you remember Sim 1?
I have not seen it, eh?
So basically,
it's
it's
on my list
about
to
an
watch.
actress who just won't do her job. She's a prima donna. So the director has a friend who has a technology he's come up with, and they use the technology. And this is Andrew Nichol, who is a futurist, who I kind of see myself as a futurist when it comes to writing sci-fi and thinking ahead. Andrew Nichol's always thinking out there what's going to happen next. And here he is in 2002 writing a movie that's very relevant today about AI. Right?
Yeah.
It's a must watch. And it's just brilliant. It's like it's Kiwi director, sci-fi writer, filmmaker, and writer and directed this movie, which is really cool. Where he gets to do what he wants. But of course, Al Pacino, right at the height of his, of his what do we call it, his stardom, prominence, is in it, and Rachel Roberts, gorgeous, she's was it Canadian? Yeah, great movie. It's a must-watch, guys, if you guys haven't seen it. But brilliant, brilliant movie. So, are you like, with the storytelling? Because we haven't mentioned Moneyland, right? Moneyland's one of my favorites, and it's a young adult, right? Moneyland, or is it just a bit more mature? Where would you class Moneyland?
Well, there's a special category I think they call new adult, which is like the older end of young adult, sort of late teens, early 20s, and Moneyland sank at first because I gave it a shit cover initially,
Yeah.
but then I gave the rights to a new publisher called Next Chapter, and put some more money on marketing and reviews, and it's managed to float, and I'm getting a tiny little dribble of royalties from it, and people liked the sequel. I wrote Moneyland in 2017, and then I wrote the sequel, Payback, in about 2020, I can't believe the sequel was a success, because I wrote it in a real hurry, but I was quite strategic with the plot, and I learned big lessons about making the hero, making the protagonist more likable. Because So if you haven't heard of Moneyland, it's a story about Eden, who's a girl who joins a Lord of the Flies style experiment where they get locked in the suburbs for a whole year. This tribe of 12 teenagers, and they get left with nothing to eat. And so, like the AI has human rights by now, or the equivalent of rights. AI has taken over the world and putting people out of their jobs, and AI is really strategic and heartless. And AI wants to experiment to see how they can crush humanity by paying humans out, by paying humans to destroy themselves. So everyone in this experiment gets given $1 million cash, and the kids think that they can hold on to their milli for a year, but the economy goes insane. Kids are paying each other $500,000 for a can of Coke, sort of thing. Kids are getting vicious and trying to steal from each other, and it's wild. And then published the sequel, and people like the sequel, which I'm really proud of, and I think I did a pretty cool job of the plot in the second. It's got plenty of key differences from the first one, but it's got all the things that you would like from the first one. So and they're both on Audible, which is really cool. So you can enjoy the audiobook of it.
It's awesome, man. I like seriously, it's a good book, and I'm so glad that you with the sequel doing so well and people liking it. I mean, it's already got what's like 4.5 out of 10. So you guys can the link for is in the chat there, so you guys can pick that up and have a look to it later. But the other thing is that is that the only is this series the only one that you've done for new adults or something, or is there other books?
Yeah, interestingly, in Blood Alcohol, story number 4, Butterfly Tongue, is narrated by a girl across 5 years. So she's 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And that Blood Alcohol story, Linda Nickel, my co-writer who I was talking about just before, she points out that it would make a great young adult novel. And I instantly said back to her, I was probably a bit rude and snappy. I was like, oh, there's no money in young adult books in New Zealand. I've almost never had that mindset. Hey, I've always been like, who cares if there's no money in an artistic project? You go ahead and make the piece of art anyway. But I'm just being more strategic, hey, and getting less sidetracked by novels, and really getting quite dedicated to screenplays and putting books in film people's hands and trying to impress them. I love the challenge of being able to impress someone who's so good at art that they can create an entire film. Well, like you, Aro, you're pretty cultured. You've got a big brain and lots of artistic talent. So if I can impress you with the work, that's a good challenge. Yeah.
I mean, I liked this when I read Moneyland. I was like, man, I like I could visualize it. You know, it for me. It could almost work so much more. Like, you know how like you're always thinking like what more, how more, how more, like as what the Japanese call light novels, and which makes them real, dude. Like they love their light novels, and what light novels is basically say you basically got a page of art, right? Like a sketch, like a drawing, right, of what's happening right on this page, and then you go on the next page, and you got what's happening on that page, and from that, they've been so like that sort of like almost sells the book itself because you like the kids see pictures and they go, oh, I love to see that. So in Japan they go, that book, that light novel is doing so well, let's turn that into a manga. Okay, the manga's doing so well, now we'll turn it into a anime. Oh, the anime is doing so well, let's turn it into a live action movie, right? And it's like this whole freaking process. Whereas in the West, it's like, oh, it's a book, let's just do the book, and that's all we'll do. And so I think this is why a lot of what we do in the West is so very minute. We don't think in the way of how to really market the hell out of something. And
Oh yeah.
and it's just amazing that like that's why like I could see it as a comic book, right? I could see it as a graphic novel, and I could, with a because you've got amazing characters. Got a person in a wheelchair. You've got parts of the person that's got bionic arms. It's almost like heavy metal. Like, so when you look at that, I kind of like, because we're talking about this earlier, but I'll bring it up now as well. So let me go up to this page here. So actually it's about here. So you're looking at stuff like this, right? Parts and pieces of characters on your, am I on the right one? Have I brought up? So
I reckon that comic should have been first. The problem with Bobo, the trouble with Bobo. Sorry.
Yeah,
should have been first in that collection. It's
it,
really good.
It would have been like it's something like even like it's also like the fact is if once you've got the comic, if you get the last, the second story being the really good story, it kind of makes you keep going and going, what else is there? I think it's like the ABCs, and you got like 5 stories and one is like a bit more, but yeah, I mean we're gonna have try to keep this ongoing because it's a setup, it's a whole story. I mean, as an ongoing series, but they're all standalone. So there is some pretty full-on stuff happening in it, but you get to build up amazing worlds and stuff through comic books. That's why I always think that like let me get out of there, that with stories and like you can, especially with sci-fi and fantasy. Because I was thinking today, like when I was thinking about, when we're going to have this interview today, like discussion, if I was looking at blood alcohol, how would it translate to a comic book? How would it? And I was thinking, how would that work? Because how would you describe without actually giving away the main things? Because the descriptions for blood, for the 2 characters, or actually the lead, it's like the female character, right? It's quite specific, but what she is never mentioned, right? But you kind of, because you don't talk about it, but you talk about everything around it. And like if you were doing that in a comic book form, you'd already show it. You're kind of already giving it away. The moment you see it, it's gone. And so you kind of like want to like, there's some things you can't translate to comic books that work really well in your head. And it's a lot like Clive Barker, right? Like you can, like his books, his stuff cannot translate. There's certain things that can't translate well to film, but would work great as comic books. But there's also stuff that translates really well to film, like Hellraiser, right? And Cabal, which is like not the, actually also thought like Midnight Meat Train. That's a pretty cool one as well. Or the Books of Dead, but Nightbreed. Yeah, I just couldn't think of it, but it's over here somewhere. But stuff like that. but there's some things that like you can't can't translate to film or TV because it's made for literature. Now,
Yeah, a picture paints 1,000 words, but
yeah,
1,000 words can paint any picture. So yeah, there are
that's it.
advantages to both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's what. Yeah. So I was thinking like so apart from horror and new adult, you've written other books as well, right? Like the Crime Church and stuff like that. You've got
Yeah,
new.
yeah.
Tell us a bit about that, mate.
Crime Church is my fucking masterpiece. It's like there's so much heart behind Crime Church. Uh, it's like I come from a rough city. There's Christchurch has always had an underworld, and I got really into it when I was about 18 or 19, and I dipped more than a toe into all the violence and the skinhead stuff down there, and so around me there were people or friends of friends or friends of me who were taking some of them were taking much bigger risks than me. Other people were taking smaller risks than me, and I was the wild, violent criminal in front of them. This is literally over half a lifetime ago away because it's like
well, you're 40 now, right? So that's like and you're 18. That is like about 22 years ago.
well, technically I'm 39, but yeah, about to turn 40 next year.
Enjoy. It's good to have the zero behind your name. I'm 50, so it's okay. You actually, you start starting to graze, and it's all good.
Yeah, and so Crime Church, I was desperate for a publisher with it and couldn't find a publisher, so I went with a very small New Zealand publisher called Rangi Tower Publishing. They did. I was grateful that she published it, but it was just garbage, like badly packaged and bad manuscript layout and some typos in the manuscript that got in front of reviewers, and that was embarrassing. But hey, I brought that over to the publisher Next Chapter as well, and they've republished it, and yeah, we sent it out to a bunch of new reviewers. So yeah, it's people are saying pretty glowing things about it. I sent a digital copy to the director of that film Savage the other day. Did you guys both catch Savage, which is a New Zealand gang film from about 2 years ago?
Okay.
It was in cinemas.
Heard of it.
By Sam Kelly, I think is the writer director. Yeah, so if he reads Crime Church, I'll be honoured by that. And Alan Duff said really glowing things about Crime Church. He was
It's
grateful.
not, you don't mean Savage River, do you?
No, Savage.
it's just
Just a film called Savage. It's about a
Savage.
Wellington gang member,
Yeah.
like a street gang.
Like who's the writer or director on it?
Sam Kelly.
Sam Kelly.
Yep. Bring up the IMDb.
Yeah, I mean it's the best way for it.
Anyway, Crime Church was like my masterwork. It was like so, and I had fun writing it. I enjoyed writing it more than Moneyland. There was more heart in it than Moneyland.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of truth in Crime Church, and it's incredibly
more to
fresh
touch on.
and original. I want to write the book that I'll be remembered for if I died. Yeah, it's the most important thing I've ever written. Yeah.
So tell us, give us. I mean, like the synopsis is there, but tell us, why would I want to read it? That's the thing. It's like sell it
6
to me,
different protagonists from 6 different positions in the young Christchurch underworld. So there's like a slacker kind of skateboard, kind of non-violent druggy crim. And you see his trajectory through getting himself in lots of trouble in Christchurch and then getting out and moving to Perth and doing the Aussie experience. But as he moves to Perth, his younger brother back in Christchurch falls into like a very fresh 21st century skinhead subculture. So they're being little Nazi boy racer kind of scumbags, and they're causing a lot of bother. And the book's got a lot of neo-Nazi stuff in it. because yeah, it's got the worldview of these guys, and I assumed that had never been done in New Zealand literature. I've never come across
Yeah.
Mm.
a New
No,
Zealand book that has
yeah,
skinheads in it. One or two films, but maybe not
yeah,
books.
yeah. I think
Um,
it's kind of like something like a bit like Romper Stomper, right? You get the Aussies got their thing, but I mean, this is from a like actual personal lived life, right? It's not like somebody just coming up and making shit up just for the hell of making shit up. It's actually because you know, like you said, it's personal because you've lived it. And I think that's kind of really, really cool thing about it. It's like knowing that, you know, that whatever you're writing is in there that you've taken, you know, I guess not, it's not like nonfiction, but it's taken from experiences that you had from people that you've known, you know.
yeah,
Was
a
it
really
hard
good.
writing it?
Yeah, moderately hard, but with a very clear. Sometimes with an artistic project, maybe you find this too, Justin. But you'll people talk about having a north star. So north star, like the guiding star that you move towards, and you never forget it. You can wake up in the middle of the night with a cloudy head, and you still remember exactly where you're going with this work of art that you're trying to make. Yeah. So Crime Church had a really obvious North Star. I never forgot that. Really clear direction for where, so yeah, so I mean forget writer's block, as the opposite of writer's block. Yeah, really clear place to head towards with Crime Church. Yeah, and so just to continue with the other characters, it's got a Māori girl who she's what's her position? She's an enabler of some of the other crims.
Yeah.
And then there's a really ruthless guy who's like a young, unapologetic psychopathic thug. And he's really interested in the biker gangs. So he's based on a dude that I went to school with who ended up joining the Headhunters and some other gangs, and did a lot of years in prison. And that character is determined to kick out the old guard of the Epitaph Riders in Christchurch and fight his way to the top. And then there's a guy who's a bit like the Joker, and his character is more interested in raising hell just for the hell of it, just because he thinks it's funny to fuck with everyone else.
Yeah. Creating
Um,
chaos for the laugh.
and you got the mothers of these characters as well. These boys that are out fighting and causing havoc. You get their mums' points of view. Yeah. So
Quite a different sort of take when you got the parents involved in the story, because usually it's about like it's just the kids and that's, you know, they're the main characters and nobody else sort of has an input into it. I remember like when I was in like 15, 16, I used to hang out with two mates of mine who are like probably about 5 years older, 6 years older, and so they're about in their 20s, and we used to smoke a lot. And I didn't know they were part of the underworld. Didn't even care. They didn't even portray themselves around me like that. They were just like nice, gentle people, right? And you know, they were like actually gang members. But for me, they were like just, you know, this is Aru, this is so and so, this is so and so, and we're good mates. And I didn't know that until we parked up in Paihia, and then one of the guys, one of my schoolmates, turns to me, "How do you know them?" I said, "Well, they're my friends from my town. They're so and so." I said, "Who?" I said, "Well, no, that's him." And they had their gang names, right? So, and I'm like, "This is his real name." And so I then clicked. This is when I was in fifth form, right? And this is when I clicked. I said, didn't change anything between us. All I knew was that I'm not going to get anybody hassling me anymore. That was it, you know, because I know that you know, this is my crowd and this is the people I run with. So, yeah, and I was a skateboard dude, you know, and so yeah, I'm the skater, and so that's why, you know, I think I found that really interesting. Said, "Oh, that's a pacifist skater dude. That was totally me," you know, and chill out, smoke, and have, you know, watch movies with your mates. But I I think Kiwis have a really unique voice in the world, and you know, the way we think and the way we do things and the way we process everything around us, right? Because we're like, you know, it's kind of like the dumping ground of everything everybody else does out there. And we have a great way of like saying, well, this is us, you know. So when I hear things like, you know, when you say like crime church, this story, this like this, there are people out there who don't understand why we would have neo-Nazis or why we would have skinheads. They wouldn't get it. Well, why would you have that when predominantly you have a, you know, a very brown culture, indigenous culture, then you have a very white culture. But then also you have Asians, you have Indians, you have Islanders, you know, you have people from the Middle East, all this, right, from South America. But why would you have this uniquely, you know? And I think a lot of times people don't understand that. But I was in Chicago, and my neighbor was a skinhead that had parties every weekend for 3 years until they, you know, after about like, I think for a year, after a year, they just moved out. But like for a whole year, I had to put up with partying all the time. And I just went across one night and went, hey, dude, it's a bit loud. Can you keep it down? It's like, yeah, okay. You know, it was like, sweet. And, but, you know, when you're next door, like the door right there, you know, is those people when you go, how do I treat this? Well, they're young, they're kids. You know, if you treat them with respect or teach you respect, we I could go, rah, 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 yeah, skinheads. You know, here's a couple of Indians living next door to you. Here's, you know, it's like, you know, I think, you know, in each group, like, I love the way you've set up Crime Church, where you got all these different characters, and it's such a cool thing to see. So, guys, if you want to check that out, do have a look. You know, check out the book, and I'll put this up on screen again if you're just joining us. So, this is Michael's book, Crime Church, and you can check out all his stuff. It's actually in the, you know, I've got the link in the chat there, but I'll also put it up. So you can just search up Michael's name and it'll come up. But do check out his Goodreads book listing, because I think it's such a cool, you know, assortment of stories to read. Because the other thing is, this is, you know, nonfiction, but from experience writing, right? It's not something, you know, just out there. Now you've got other books as well. So you've got one here that was created with your kids, right? Am I right or wrong here?
Yeah, My Animal Family. The kids didn't write any of the lines or anything, but similar to what I mentioned before, like if I died tomorrow, I'd want to leave a piece of art for them, where my values come through it, and they can pick up the book at some time in their lives and get these cool values from it, and so they can learn to value science, they can learn to value illustration, they can learn that being creative with English will make your life better, because you know, pursuing any kind of art and like getting deep into cultural things and really investigating cultures is incredibly important. And with a really great message about not thinking that humans are particularly special animals, and accepting that that, you know, even you know, viruses, you could argue that viruses are just as important as human beings. Like, this is assuming you don't believe in God, probably. It's quite, I guess, quite an atheist standpoint in this thing.
So what is? I mean, I noticed that you did some you're illustrator on that. Are you and you've got Emma Weekly also as an illustrator. Now, you are a cartoonist. I've seen your work and stuff, and you do a lot of really cool, awesome stuff. You know, but what part of this did you do the illustrations on? Was it like the prelims or the design?
Yeah, Emma laid out everything, and then I got out watercolor paints and tea bags and wet brushes, and then some very fine tip Sharpies, and I did a lot of detail, a lot of accent to really really deepen the illustrations and make them much more pleasant to look at, because they were quite quick and simple at first. Emma's very, very skilled. I'm really, really grateful to have worked with her. She's very easy to deal with. She's just someone in Wellington that I found off the Big Idea, and just commissioned her to do these illustrations.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there's so much original stuff in there. Like, I think everything in there is an original drawing by her. So a shit ton of effort from her. But yeah, I did a lot of shading, a lot of shadow, a lot of fine detail, a lot of roots, a lot of feathers and fur and scales and eyeball reflections. Yeah. I hardly cartoon anymore, you guys. I slid that back and left it to people like you guys and Shane and Rico, those people in the world. I'm just focused on writing these days, and I parked the dream of wanting to be an illustrator, and I hardly ever do it.
Well, I mean, you are a wordsmith, so you do. It's like the same thing with me. Like I just thought, might as well give up drawing and just concentrate on writing the script, so I can just give it to the artist. Because you kind of like want to work on your strengths, and I think a lot of times people get confused about But like, unlike people like Justin here, who does his art and the writing, he's got best, he's able to put out his comic books. But I mean, a lot of us, you kind of have to like slim down and concentrate on what really works for you. But I mean, like you're doing right now, you're going, okay, I want to go into film. So that's, having spent more time writing, now you're concentrating more time on actually working on towards filmmaking. Has it been a tough process for you, like going from writing lots of words to writing less words, and the whole setup?
Oh, with less words, do you mean screenplays or short stories, or what do you mean?
Also, Justin, you can jump and ask questions as well. Yeah, that's what I mean. So, like, we were talking about earlier about describing and stuff, but I mean, just the process of learning a whole new language and, techniques and stuff that's involved in writing a script compared to what everything. I mean, you've done so many books and you've spent so much time being, studying novel writing and, that sort of stuff. But now you're like, moving on to film, has it been a tough sort of, or has it been easier?
Never too tough, but I've embarrassed myself a few times by like making rookie mistakes with screenplay formatting, and putting it in front of people who told me that my work, my initial attempts weren't good enough, which is fine. You got to start somewhere, right? You can't expect to swim as soon as you dive into a lake if you've never swum before. And I like where I'm at now, and I know that I bring a lot of wisdom with I'll put in my 10,000 hours with creative writing, with fiction writing, and I really like the challenges of screenplays. It's a really cool challenge. I like it because it's hard. If it was easy, I wouldn't like it as much. I like being a beginner.
Justin, ask some questions, bud. I mean,
so when you're writing novels, you'll be describing as you're going, right? So you'll be describing a tone of voice as somebody's talking, but with a screenplay, you wouldn't be describing that quite the same. Did you find that sort of a challenge? Like you're having descriptions in one part and then dialogue, like it's separate, whereas with novels, it's all seems to be one. Did you find that a challenge to sort of separate those out?
Yeah, big challenge, eh? Because reading a random line. Pihiawiri marae, whangarei, booed until Jen drips tears onto the lectern. There's a lot in that setting, in that sentence. If it was in a book, it would be 5 times as long, and I would describe the way her tears are falling, and I would describe the feeling of the marae, and I would maybe explain a marae to Americans who don't know what a marae is. And it's screenplays are fascinating, how brutal they are, and people had to remind me a few times after my first few attempts, hey, screenplays are a visual thing. You don't really have capacity to say what's going on inside someone. You have to describe what they're doing on the outside, and then the reader has to infer how they're feeling from that. And just constantly picturing everything on screen.
It's like so you're describing that somebody was crying, right? So all you got is like was like, it's kind of like, rather than doing a whole sentence, you just go, she's crying. That's all they want. They care about. It's like, she's crying, and then you know why? It's like, then somebody go, because it's kind of weird. Like, film noir is kind of interesting because you can narrate the whole damn thing while the guy's thinking what he's thinking, right? And like, you go, well, in walks the dame, and he's got this beautiful dress on, makes the wind, the wind falls across, blows the dress, and the light shines on it. It's not film noir. And it's like, it's a horror story. It's like, dang, it's kind of, yeah. Was it like, was it difficult? Like, I mean, like, was it difficult to go, yeah, but I want to do this. I need to put that in there so you guys can understand. Or did you just go, I get it?
It's difficult, and I made plenty of mistakes. And attempting to cram too many words onto a page will never succeed. The person reading it doesn't want to see a really dense, busy page. If you hang tight for 1 second, I'll show you something I was reading last night, and you'll be really interested in this. Hang on a second.
Okay, let me bring up. I was trying to find that Kelly guy's Sam Kelly. I can't remember his name though. That's a weird thing. I can't, like, the spelling. What is it, with an E or something? Savage.
Might be Kelly, I think.
Fucking yeah, the screenplay, it's assuming that they filmed off this, it's very, very identical to what, very, very similar to what ended up on screen. It's fascinating, and it's really like Quentin Tarantino seems to have like.
Oh, I've got that. Yeah, I bought that the other day.
It was really loose with it.
Yeah.
He's
but,
like,
I mean, like,
it's unconventional and it's wasteful, and it's having a good time, and it's not being economical. It's really interesting. Yeah.
well, but I mean, he's really like a dialogue-driven. He's dialogue guy. Like, all his books, like all his movies, are talking. And so it's going to be talking. It's like Reservoir Dogs, man. I fell asleep 3 times or twice trying to get myself through it because of all the talking. And like, the moment they get into a room, and I'm like, I fall asleep every time on that, right? Because they're just talking. So it's kind of different, like, because he's not the right person to be like thinking about when it comes to like writing scripts. He's got a real unique way of for dialogues and screenwriting.
Obviously not singing the praises of Harvey Weinstein, but this was a Miramax film, wasn't it? And Miramax had extremely good taste for taking a risk on eccentric creative films.
Yeah.
Hundreds of films. Yeah. Like world-changing films. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like Fight Club, right? Fight Club's one of them.
Really?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
I think Fight Club was one of the ones part of Miramax. I remember they were like, no, you couldn't make the movie now because like, you look at what Edward Norton did with that whole, how hard he was on that, like, because Edward Norton's not a they reckon he's not an easy guy to work with, but he's such an artist that he puts everything into it, and he demands everybody to be professional around him. But I don't think without him and Brad Pitt, that movie would have succeeded. But carry on.
Fuck, man, we could talk about Chuck Palahniuk's work for a whole episode too. He's a great man, the Fight Club author. Yeah. Hey guys, I've got a really interesting. But before we wrap up, because I should phone off. James Cameron gave a keynote speech to to Sparta yesterday in New Zealand. So Sparta is the Screen Production and Development Association. So it's the association for film producers, because I wanted to get wanted to get hold of one of the Deathgasm producers, Morgan Stewart, but she said, "Oh, sorry, I'm busy at the conference."
Yeah.
So, as the Herald was reporting yesterday, James Cameron gave this fascinating speech where he was really singing the praises of Wellington and New Zealand, and it's so fascinating that one of the most influential and powerful filmmakers out there is giving his life to New Zealand and thinks that New Zealand has got something to give back. So that's really cool.
I mean, definitely. I mean, we have a country of talented people. The only thing we lack is finances.
Yeah.
That's all we lack. We're not like America. We got like 500 million or so many people. If you give 1 cent, you'd get 500 million, right? Kind of thing. Where you only got 5 million people here, and like there isn't enough, backing for a lot of independent creators. So most of your time spent struggling to get finances to get your work off the ground. And I think if there was money there and support was there financial, you get so much stuff coming out of New Zealand, left, right, and center.
Yep. I can. Two films have been on my mind recently that have not got New Zealand Film Commission funding. So Deathgasm 2 had to go through Kickstarter to raise its money.
Like seriously, like Deathgasm 2, when Deathgasm won such a freaking huge thing, and also the fact that Jason, it's Jason, right? It's a Howlett. There's a well-known name now, right? All over the world, such a well-known name all over the world. Yet you won't back him. It's like,
Loop Track, which is a film that's in cinemas right now. It's this Tom Sainsbury film that he made with these producers from an Auckland sort of video advertising film production house called Chillbox Creative, and that's fascinating. They went through Boosted to raise 40,000 of that money. The film would have cost a bit more, but largely privately funded, not much public funding on that, and yet they've just gone around the system and they got their thing into cinemas, and it's doing a lot better than a lot of publicly funded shitty films.
Yep. This one here, Thomas Sainsbury.
Yep. Yeah, much respect to those guys for getting it done,
Yeah. What's this movie about? So
it's got a Northland connection, I believe that they filmed some of it in Northland, and one of the actresses, Noah Campbell, who's mentioned in the credits above, she's in Northland right now. She's just up in Rawene. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I asked her to have coffee. Might have coffee with her next week.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, there is, like a lot of films that are coming out now, you can notice the scenery. Like, that's what I always remember first is the scenery. Yeah, right. That's right. I actually was going to bring this up. This is the one about the guys who go hiking, right? Yeah, it's on my list of I actually put a trailer up for it. Hold on, let me just find it, because I just thought it was quite interesting, and because I saw the where are we? Let me just find it here. I saw the scenery. I thought, hey, that's New Zealand, and sure enough, went on IMDb. It's New Zealand.
Sure is. I'm pretty sure there's some Northland in there.
Yeah, like that's the beauty of what we can offer, right? Like I like the nature and everything. I mean, you're a hiker, right, yourself? So, So, have you watched this yet, or are you planning to?
Yeah. I went to see it on Monday. Yeah.
What did you think of it?
I liked that it exists. I like that they got it made. I didn't adore it, and I'm not the biggest fan of Tom Sainsbury, but he's created a whole film and I haven't, so he's doing better than me, so I can just shut up. Respect to those guys for getting it made.
I think it is tough to get stuff out there, right? This is from Vendetta Films, so let's have a look at this. Give me 1 second. I will
The distributor,
jump over
rather.
to, and then we'll finish up on this one for tonight. Okay, so
I
let's
think
go.
all the producers are from Chillbox Creative.
It's your first time up here? Yeah.
Then I was like, yo, this
I'm
is
Nicky,
New
by the way.
Zealand.
Oh.
This is New Zealand. This is
That's
my
me.
backyard. I can see that.
Hey! We made it! This is Monica. This is Austin. They're from Australia.
Have we met before?
I don't think so.
Ian, are you alright?
Yeah, why? You know, your whole vibe is just so... What's on your mind? Do you ever feel like you're being watched? Or by the government? Or something in the trees? Can you see that?
In a world.
I think it's been following us.
Things can seem way bigger than they actually are.
And sometimes they're not even there, maybe.
You look terrible. Did you sleep?
Yeah. Nicky, this isn't the path. Yeah, it's obviously not the path. Feeling lost, mate? Just go straight. We've got to get him home. Hey, buddy. I just wanted some quiet. I know you think I'm crazy. But I'm telling you, there's something out there. Did you see it? It killed him! Not gonna get me. Don't you worry. It is kind of creepy. I can see what you mean now. Don't say that.
All right.
Yeah.
That sort of covers us for tonight, guys. Let me just finish off there. At the end of every show podcast we do here, we do like words of wisdom or words experiences. We take our guests and ask them, hey, 3 to 5 minutes, give us a little bit of what you've learned and kind of inspirational, and we clip that up later and we'll put it separately in the playlist of words of wisdom. So Michael, I'm going to give you a couple minutes, mate, to think of what you want to say, and then I'll grab you to say it. Justin, thank you so much, buddy, for jumping in and talking about world building and sharing your comic with us. Looking forward to it. Keep us in check, and hey, let me know when you're ready to put some, come and talk about, like, show off more art and talk about the writing and stuff. Yeah. You're always welcome, man. Really appreciate it. Michael, thank you. Didn't expect to have you for so long, and I thank you for that, man. I really appreciate that. Now, you ready? All right, let's do words of wisdom.
I would say art saves lives. I've got art saves lives tattooed on my back somewhere. Let's see if we can bust the shit out. Is that coming through? Let's see the old art saves lives. Yeah. Can't see you guys, but apparently I'm still.
Is that it? Yeah, is that all you want to say, or is that more?
Art saves lives is like it's a real pithy way of reminding me and anyone else reading it to make art when you're feeling shit about the world. We all have dreary days. We all have days when you feel like the world is conspiring against you and that you're the unluckiest person in the world. But the art that you make today will pay off tomorrow and will make your life more interesting and will make your family proud and will make your partner proud of you. And time moves at a really consistent rate, and we our brains fool us about how quickly time is moving all the time. So you got to put in the hard work today, and it's just a sleep away before you reap dividends. I'm sure Quentin Tarantino had some shit days when he was writing this, and he probably thought that no one would ever love it or pay attention to it, or thought it was too weird. And now it's something that we quote every week, isn't it? So, art saves lives. Keep making art. Art will make your life better.
Excellent. Thank you, bud. Yeah, and whoops, I hadn't really thought about that. And but that is very important. It saved mine. Like, I mean, my sister said to me, you know, when I was depressed and down, she said, well, what makes you happy? I said, art and music. And she said, well,
Yep.
do that. And I've done that for the last 5 odd years, and it's made me happy, you know. And I think it's, and you know, it's kind of weird because everybody think like it's kind of, you know, because we think everything is now, we never think about tomorrow. And I think art makes you think about, well, if I put this line here, if I put that line there, if I write this, I write that, that means I got to finish it tomorrow, right? I got to complete it tomorrow. I can't, you know, I got to get out to people. It takes you out of your little universe of self and puts you into the entire world, time, space. Thank you, guys. I don't want to mumble any more on that, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. And have a good evening wherever you are. Please like, subscribe, share. We'll be putting out stuff. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Dan, everybody. Be well.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.